Hey Aisha, it's lovely having you on today.
Thank you so much for having me, Shams. I'm so happy to be here.
It's my absolute pleasure to introduce the incredibly talented Aisha Al-Bakry, who first and foremost is an artist, a marketing specialist, a co-host of the podcast Outcast, amongst many other things, as well as being dyslexic. So Aisha, can you briefly tell me a little bit about yourself and these ventures? You being an artist, the Outcast podcast.
So the modality that I practice as an artist is mainly silk painting. I obviously do a lot of other things. Most creatives are very multifaceted. So I try not to really bench myself and force myself to do just one thing, which is probably one of the reasons why I also got into marketing. I was just really interested in creativity as a whole. And then I started to see how the marketing sector has a lot of space for creative thinking. And that led me down a lot of different paths. Eventually, I got to meet my now co-host team of the podcast because of the stuff that I was doing. Being in the marketing sector kind of forced me to put myself out there. And yeah, basically.
Great. No, it's super interesting. So the main things that I do on my account on Dyslexia Awareness Oman is share dyslexic stories. So I would love to know more about your journey and how schooling was for you. So maybe we can start with how you found out you were dyslexic.
I was diagnosed when I was about 12 years old. I was actually a really, really terrible student. It was just like I could never grasp any of the things that I was being taught in school. And honestly, I got a lot of flack and a lot of criticism from not just like my peers, but from my teachers. There's one teacher in particular that I would never forget. And she once took me in front of my class and she told them that if they wanted to be successful, that they would do everything that I didn't do. And this completely traumatized me and scarred me. But luckily, the school was kind of paying attention to all of the students that were struggling. And they approached my parents and they asked them if they would be interested in putting me through the sort of like program to like diagnose possibly different students who they had a feeling, could have been dyslexic. So in addition to me being a bad student, I used to have to go for those extra like Islamic and Arabic classes on the weekends. So instead of doing that for about 4 weeks, I would go and sit down with this assessor. And he put me through a lot of like different tests where like, there were puzzles. Sometimes I would have to read. And yeah, by the end of it, when they approached my parents, basically they told them that I was dyslexic. Dyslexia comes in so many different, variations and levels. Not everybody has the same sort of dyslexia. Mine isn't very, it's not very extreme in the sense that I have always been really into reading, for example. I just have a very quick, I don't even know exactly what to call it, but like my mind kind of races and I start to predict things rather than actually read or like, yeah. So that's kind of the form of dyslexia that really started to hold me back because my mind was constantly trying to predict the patterns within whatever it was that I was reading. Sometimes I would read things that are not there. I had a few issues when it came to like numbers. Those are sort of like my limitations, right? But then there were other things that come with dyslexia that I really kind of like, that I find are sort of like a superpower and I'm very grateful for. So the fact that I do see patterns really does help me when it comes to looking at the macro vision of any project that I take on. Schooling wise, I think that I always really struggled because I also didn't really know how to maximize and how to use certain kinds of like study skills to be able to help me. Since then, obviously, because I just realized that I don't want to live the rest of my life with these limitations, I've since learned how to do that. And I went from thinking of myself as like the worst student, that I would never be able to like learn or ingest anything, to honestly feeling like I could learn just about anything and probably be better than most of my peers. But it's just about like taking the time to actually try to understand how to study and how to maximize on those things that you think are limitations, because not everything is a limitation. You just have to learn to work with it.
Right. I'm so glad that you said that. I'm sorry that, you went through that in school and that, that whole teacher experience must have been quite traumatic for you. But I'm glad that your narrative has changed over time and you have this much more positive outlook towards it. And I think that's really important, is how you feel about yourself and also figuring out what works for you, because what works for you might not work for someone else and vice versa. So I think it does get better over time once you kind of figure out, okay, how do I best learn? And then you start gaining that confidence once you start seeing that your output is getting better and better. So I can relate to a lot of the things that you said. Actually, I wanted to ask, did you have any support in school throughout your
Oh,
K
yeah.
12?
Essentially, like after I got diagnosed, it was during a year when I got held back. And one of the things that the school recommended is that they put me in a school that had, a program to be able to support me. So my parents and me started looking around, and essentially we were looking for a school where I wouldn't have to study like in both English and Arabic. Like I
Mm.
still went to a bilingual school, but what they realized is basically I couldn't keep up with the fact that I was learning in two different languages, because my brain was kind of like going haywire, um, because we had equal parts English and Arabic. So after the sixth grade, I stopped studying in Arabic. I like took it as a second language, but it was really like a breeze. Parts of me kind of regret it now, just because I'm still Hawani, and um, like I'm trying to kind of get back to it now.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, anyways, in the new school that I went to for about a year and a half, I did have a teacher that was supposed to be like supporting me. But honestly, some of the exercises she gave me were they were too simple. I don't know. I think that sometimes the idea of being dyslexic makes people think that you're a lot slower than you actually are, because I'm not slow. I'm actually quite fast. Like I pick things up really quickly. But I think the biggest issue that I had was just trying to understand the macro vision. This is one thing that I realized about teachers, that most of the times they don't really understand it themselves. So every time I would ask, they would just get very frustrated with me, like, what are you asking and what are you trying to do? Because
Right.
they would explain and I would just keep saying, I don't understand. Because I don't see the bigger picture. If I don't understand the bigger picture, then I really don't understand what you're saying. Because
Yeah.
if I don't understand the essence, I can't really see the connections. So that was also like one of the really big things that I took away from, understand the way that my brain functions when it's trying to absorb different ideas. Like I have to start with a bigger view and then start to go into the smaller ideas.
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. No, wow, I could relate to a lot of the things that you were saying, especially when you're saying that, you started off learning in both languages and then that got a little challenging, which same, I was sort of exempt from Arabic, which I, again, sort of regret now because I don't speak Arabic and read Arabic very well, but, same, I'm trying to get into it now. So yeah, no, I definitely, a lot of the things that you were saying I could relate to. I feel like we had a very similar experience in schooling, and the same thing with them expecting you to be like super slow and needing to give you easier content. It's not the content, it's the way you're being taught. We learn differently. It's not that we're dumb, it's not that we're slow. We learn slower if you make us learn in a way that isn't conducive to us. So that's the major misconception there. So I'm glad that you also pinpointed that. So yeah, so that was school. And what about like university? Was it different in university for you?
Okay, so my university experience was a shock to my system. I thought that I was going to go into it and that everything was going to fall into place, and I was finally just going to be in my element, studying the thing that I absolutely love. But one, I had no idea how to study, so obviously it wasn't going to be a breeze. Second, because I didn't know how to study, I felt like no matter what or course that I took, there was something wrong with the course and not wrong with me. So I just ended up changing so many times over, let's say, 4 years, and it just didn't stick. And I ended up leaving without getting my degree. And this was something that really, really affected my confidence. I really used to shame myself for it. And every time I was anywhere near anybody who would like start talking about like, their degrees and anything that had to do with academia, I literally just felt shame. Until I basically went into the workforce and things kind of changed from there.
Wow. Yeah. I'm so glad that you mentioned all of that. I mean, I went through a similar experience with university and I did manage to finish, but in the end of the day, it's not about whether you finished your ed or not. It's like what you do with your life. And you've done incredibly well despite that. Like, education is one route, but it isn't the only route. Right. So there are so many different avenues, especially in this day and age. There's so many ways to learn. You don't need a brick and mortar education. If that's something that you want that works for you, then great. But otherwise, look at you now, So, alhamdulillah, everything happens for a reason, right? So you
Sure.
said that, like, things are now, different for you working. So, like, how has it been with your career?
Essentially, when I started, I didn't even know that I wanted to be an artist. So like that was a whole journey on its own. But when I say that my confidence changed, is basically I got my first job, and right off the bat, like every time I go in for an interview, I think most of the people that were employing me could not understand how it was possible that I didn't finish my education. They're just like, I don't understand. Like, what's the reason, because I think in comparison to the level of education in Oman, unfortunately, which is not very high, I think that I kind of exceed because I was also really interested in reading and self-study. This is something that I did regardless of school. It's really the one thing that I've had since I was younger that I think has completely saved me. And funny enough, whenever I used to get grounded, whenever I like didn't study or my parents wanted to punish me, they would take my books away.
Wow.
You know
Wow.
what I mean? It was like that. But anyways, yeah. So going into like the workforce, I got a lot of validation because every time I was offered a salary, I was offered the same salary as somebody who would have graduated. So I was just like, okay, interesting, interesting. That means that we're still on the same level. I did struggle with certain parts because, when you go into the workforce and you go into a traditional 9 to 5, even though they're hiring you for a certain job, you have to do other things, especially if it's a small to medium like enterprise or like organization. In the particular role that I'm thinking of right now, I was supposed to be an administrator, but I was also doing things like the finance, handling like the petty cash. So I would have to do like, deal with numbers. I would have to like count money. Let me just tell you that the amount of stress, oh my God. And the thing is, the person who was my boss, yeah, who was my direct boss, was actually like a relative of mine. So I would go in and I would like talk to her and I would try to like explain to her, I'm just like, listen, I really love this role, but I need to be honest about the things that I can do and the things that I'm not only going to struggle with, but I promise you, I'm going to mess it up. So don't give me money. Don't give me numbers. I'm dyslexic. And her response was always, yeah, but I'm also dyslexic. Like, don't let that limit you. Don't let these titles limit you. I'm just like, this is not a title, and I don't think it's a limitation. I see it as a strength, but I know what I can do, what I'm comfortable with, and I'm telling you, I'm always going to get it wrong. The amount of nights that I had to stay behind so that I can count and recount and try and figure out where did the money go? How did it go?
Mm.
At the end, I just couldn't do it. I literally, like, I left the job as soon as I saw a potential opening in like the creative field. I knew that it was a long shot and that there's a huge chance that I was going to fail at it. But when I looked at like the alternative of like trying to find a way to make it in this corporate world where I would always have to constantly keep explaining that my dyslexia is not a limitation, but there's just certain jobs that I'm never going to be able to excel at because it's just not my thing.
Yeah.
I was just like, yeah, you know what? I don't mind taking risk.
Good for you.
So
Good for you.
yeah, getting into my line of work was not easy. It was a lot of trial and error. I went through a lot of different experiments, trying to work with certain like collectives with different artists. And a lot of it was very experimental. They didn't know what they were doing. I didn't know what I was doing. I was just trying to use whatever skills I picked up. But yeah, I think it ended well, considering how it
No,
started.
I'm so glad to hear that. And yeah, I think, one important thing about being a leader is knowing what tasks to give which people. And you should be playing off their strengths, because that's how you end up with the most productive team. When you're forcing people to do things that they're not particularly great at, it's one thing to like, encourage them to do things that are out of their comfort zone. But when it's like almost verging on impossible, then it starts to get, almost discouraging and demotivating, because you're like, this isn't my thing, this isn't what I'm good at, and you're doing it every day. So that is completely understandable. I'm glad you took that risk anyway and moved on to bigger, better things. So what drew you into the career that you're in right now? Because I know you're doing the art stuff, you're doing the podcast, and you're doing some marketing stuff as well. So like, what is it that sort of drew you into? I'm sure art is something that you always were into, but I'll let you speak for yourself.
Yeah. So I think while I was going through all of that, constantly changing my careers, and I remember that I used to sit down with my mom and I used to tell her, I really want to, work in like the creative field, but I just don't know where to place myself. And I was just like, maybe I'd like want to like work with artists and manage them, because genuinely, I've always been interested in creativity. Like going back to when I was a kid, the only subjects that I actually excelled in were not even like the whole subject, but specific things. Like, for example, in English, and funny enough, even in Arabic, when it came to poetry,
Mm.
in Arabic,
Wow. Okay.
like,
Wow.
it's just so weird.
Thing.
But yeah,
Yeah.
I always excelled. And like, even in art, dude, like we would have a task, and my classmates would probably be on like the second practice and I'm on the 12th. I was fast because my mind is constantly like, it wants to play with ideas and experiment. How did I get into this field? I guess I started really drawing and experimenting in 2015. Yeah, in 2015. In 2016 is when I started this job that I was talking about. And I did that for like 2.5 years until I found this opportunity to basically join a collective of artists who are trying to start a business to do with the arts. And I don't want to get into like all of the details of what we were trying to do, but essentially we failed. Okay,
Oh,
we failed, and we failed colossally. It was
okay.
terrible.
Oh my
Um,
goodness.
I mean, artists are really not business people, it's a different mode of thinking, which I think is very unfortunate. We all need to learn how to promote ourselves, how to make money. And I think this is the reason why there is, that the artist trope of like, the broke artist. It's just because we're not comfortable with the money aspect and the business aspect.
Right.
So I tried that. It didn't work out. I stayed home for about like 4 months, just like wallowing, but still keeping up with the same tactics that I've always had, which is never stop learning. So I just decided, you know what, now is the time. Like, I have time, I have space. I'm literally just going to wake up every day and I'm going to study creativity. Like, my life depends on it. Like, You know, if I don't study creativity, I'm going to die. I'm going to suffocate. So for those 4 months, I literally just put my head down every single day. I just try and figure out whatever it was. I have literally like maybe 8 notebooks full of notes that I still keep until today and refer back to. And then I had this opportunity to basically manage a space called The Base. And this is basically where I started to manage events, eventually moving on to creating art programs, and I worked with the Opera House. In between, I did a few like collective exhibitions. I was a part of a few collective exhibitions. Then COVID hit, and then I had to completely like reframe the way that I was looking at my career. And I went back to just being an artist, but it was the most amazing thing that could have happened because I actually figured out what my art style actually was. Before that, I was an artist, but really, like, I was ashamed of calling myself an artist because I was drawing things because they were pretty, but there was no essence, there was no identity. I also started working at an agency where I thought, you know, because COVID, everything was kind of like dying out at the beginning of this year. We thought that things were going to go back to normal. But unfortunately, we went back into lock-in again, the lockdown. So I left the agency, but during that time, still keeping up with the same, you know, theme of, okay, now I'm doing the whole marketing thing. Let me just put my head down and learn everything that it is that I need to know. Because these are all different facets of the creative field. There's stuff that I'm always going to need to use. Like even when I was, you know, in events, I needed to hire somebody in marketing, but now I don't because I have the foundation and the basis. I think this year especially has really like pushed me to be flexible about where I see myself. I think that it was just a great fluke how I came onto the podcast. It was like a recommendation through friends. Yeah, I don't know, I'm just grateful because I think that everything that's happened within my career was just me trying to be flexible, constantly learning, and just being very sure of what it is that I would like to end up doing. Basically just being in the creative space, but not being so specific about what that looks like.
That's super interesting. Like, wow, I mean, just I'm in awe that, you know, you started in 2015, seeing how far you've come. And that just goes to show you're a testament of, you know, if you have the drive for it, you have the interest, then you're capable of achieving really whatever you'd like to. So that's like amazing. Wow. I really thought that this is something you've been doing forever. Like really, it's I've seen your work and it's amazing. So that's why I wanted to actually come up to the next segment, which is so let's talk a little bit about the photos that you sent me. I asked Aisha to send me pictures that represent what she's most proud of achieving. Okay, perfect.
Okay, so actually these paintings are really, really important to me. So the circle, the mandala, is a part of the first series of anything that I've ever done, which is art related. I did about 15 of those. And the one next to it is actually more like a self-portrait of me. Basically, like through when I started painting, I was going through a lot of basically growing pains, and I started really looking into spirituality, and that's basically what kind of opened the floodgates to me starting to paint. But I felt very vilified because of my alternative ways of like thinking about things. So you can kind of see that I've depicted myself looking kind of like a witch, but at the same time, the colors are very light and it's not dark at all because it's just a projection of what people see in me, but it really wasn't the actual truth.
Wow.
So
wow. Amazing.
Yeah, this picture was actually taken at like a collective exhibition at Geotech a couple of years ago.
Beautiful. Okay, so let's move on to the next one.
Okay, so this one is actually a part of the most recent collective exhibition. So my piece is the circle. By the way, I'm obsessed with circles. You'll
Love
actually
that.
see that
Yeah.
throughout all of my work. Yeah. So this exhibition is still on actually, and it's going to be on until the 27th of this month. And it is called I See Music. And this piece that I depicted is basically a hand with a record. And it's really, I was inspired to basically draw this after I caught my stepmom attempting to throw out like 300 of my dad's records. And these records, mind you, are part of my history. Yeah, it's so crazy. So I was just like, no, don't worry. I shall be the hero. I will take them off your hands. That's my inheritance. What are you doing?
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, I actually, when I designed this, I didn't design it as a portrait. I designed it in the landscape, and it's actually like a portal. So I'm gonna be posting, this piece in a couple of days on my Instagram, and you can see it there. And basically, the hand kind of looks like it's almost about to go through the portal, and that's basically how I've always experienced music. Like as soon as I listen to music, I feel like I'm transported into a space where I really feel completely myself. Where sometimes, like, you know, in a normal state, it's kind of hard to be in that space unless I'm creating. So music, dancing, movement is also another extension of creativity.
So this is still up. Where can this be found?
Yeah, it's at Mati's Gallery in Johar Shati. So if you go upstairs, right opposite Mani's, you can find the exhibition there.
Great. And on to the next. It's back in my photo.
Yeah, so this is a really, really important moment for me. So like I said, I'm a silk painter, which means I literally paint on fabric, on silk. And the dress that I'm wearing is actually a dress that I painted. Wow. This idea of painting clothes, or like, you know, it's just been something that's always been on my mind since I started painting. It was just an idea and I mused about it for so long. And I finally got to bring this vision to life after I got asked to be a part of this collective exhibition. And honestly, like, it's still probably the piece that I'm the most proud of. And I don't want to say too much about the things that are going to be happening in the future, but I'm really excited about where my career is going to take me as a result of this particular dress.
Oh, wow. Wow, I mean, I wish you the best in all your future endeavors. This looks stunning, and your dress looks stunning. Are you ever going to go into the fashion industry with like?
Oh yeah, it's coming, honey. It's coming.
I'm excited. I'm excited. It looks gorgeous. Okay.
Oh yeah, you know what? I completely forgot to mention that, like, the last thing that I studied, the last course that I took, and probably the thing that I stayed in the longest, was fashion marketing and management. I've always really been into fashion. And I just find it really funny how sometimes life takes you in circles, you know? And it brings you back to the things that you knew that you were interested in, but you just didn't really know how they were going to impact your life. So, yeah.
Wow. I'm really looking forward to that. I'm looking forward to. Okay, so what is this beautiful piece of art right here?
Okay, so this is another silk painting, and honestly, probably after the dress is the second most important piece I've ever done. This was a complete accident. Okay, so I was trying. Okay, if you go back to the first image that I showed you, the one with me depicting myself, if you see like the bottom of this image,
Yeah,
it looks kind of like smoke.
right.
I really was obsessed with this effect, and I don't know how I did it. So I was trying to recreate this in this other piece. So I was painting and I was enjoying it, and then all of a sudden I dropped like a huge blob of paint. I
Oh,
stared at it for like a good hour, and literally I was about to cry, and then I was just like, you know what? Sometimes mistakes happen for a reason. How about I just try to keep accentuating on this mistake that I did rather than just, scrapping it or trying to fix it. Like, let me just continue to do that. And that's how I found my art style.
wow. No,
Because I just kept on doing more of that mistake over and over again. And honestly, like my philosophy in life is that just because you fail doesn't mean you're a failure, and just because you make mistakes doesn't mean you're a mistake, because like the places you can go as a result of that can be life changing.
wow. I'm so glad that you said that because I know a lot of artists go through this where they'll make a
Yes,
mistake and they're like, crap, scrap it all. I'm so glad you didn't because this is a stunning piece of art. It is beautiful. I think this is my favorite of yours. Wow. Beautiful.
thank you. Yeah,
And
and this is also like my color palette that I love the most. I love blue
very
tones, and I'm
colorful.
also really obsessed with water.
Right,
So
right. So with this piece, is this something that's going to go into an exhibition or is it going to be sold and up for sale? What
honestly,
happening with
like
the
I
piece?
don't think that I could ever sell this piece. It just means way too much to me. So I am slowly, and I have to emphasize on slowly, working on my first solo exhibition. I don't know when that's gonna happen, but I know what the theme is. I know exactly what it is that I want to explore, and this piece is going to be a part of that. But will it ever be sold? No.
Yeah.
Like no. I can try and like I can recreate it, but this piece is staying with me forever.
All
It's not
right.
going
That makes
anywhere.
sense. Well, keep us posted on that, looking forward to
For
hearing
sure.
more about that. And
Yeah.
then there's this article.
Yeah. So the reason I wanted to include this is because I wanted you to kind of see what the exhibition space kind of looked like at the
Right.
top. This is the same exhibition as the one with the dress that I painted. It was honestly the first of its kind, and the reason why I felt really inspired to um, basically go into event planning with a huge emphasis on trying to do things that were involving the creative community. I'm not going to say artists. I want to stop emphasizing on artists because I feel like saying artists kind of limits a lot of people who have that artistic tendency but just don't identify as artists.
Right.
So creative is a wider scope. So
Mhm.
just seeing the way this whole thing came together, the way that they refuse to do the whole pretentious idea of having to have the gallery opened by an official, and it was made by the people for the people. If you even feel an inclination to do anything creative, this was your space, and
Wow.
we had like 350 people on the opening night.
Wow.
um, we were 14 artists with different disciplines. Even my sister, who's a DJ, was also there. Like she was playing. So it really, really meant a lot to me to share this space with all of the artists. And I'm never gonna get over this event. It was amazing.
Amazing. Is another event like this going to come up at any point?
Honestly, like I tried to put plans together before COVID. um I think that as an event planner, I'm not going to say that my days are over. It's just that it has to look different. So
Mhm.
maybe it's going to come. It just depends on the resources. I think one thing that I'm drawing the line at is doing things for free. um
Right. Yeah.
when when you're starting off, because you don't have you don't really have a name, you don't have that you don't have experience. Sometimes you just have to do things within limitations, which is fine. Then you get to a point where you realize that actually there's a lot of value to the things that you're doing, and you need to have support. Otherwise, all of the effort and the energy that you give away it's not worth it.
Right.
So
No, that makes
Allah,
yeah. No, I mean, it would be great to like raise money for stuff like this. I'm sure a lot of people who want to put money into an event like this. So I know I would.
yeah, I mean, look, we're always looking for art patrons, and I think that's probably where my head is at. Like, in terms of the things that I'm doing collectively outside of my own art, is I am again slowly working on a research paper which talks about how a creative industry and creating a creative ecosystem in Oman can boost the economy.
Okay, interesting. Very, very interesting.
Yeah,
Are you writing this on your own, or is it you and
yeah, so at the moment, I'm kind of putting together the bones before I can really bring other people onto it, because I feel like if we don't really have a plan, we might get lost in trying to write this thing. And I just like to be diligent. So it's the bones are coming. I think I'm getting to the point where we have a proper framework, and I see that different entities in Oman are starting to embrace this idea. So I feel like it might not have to be as extensive as I thought. So yeah, it's very
great?
promising.
Great. A lot of exciting things coming. Very, very exciting. So now the base, you briefly talked about it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the base is really my home. This is where I basically grew as a human, as an artist, as a just somebody in the community. It's still on, it's still going. Unfortunately, we just haven't gotten back to doing events, but I'm hoping that that is going to change. I have an event that's on the books for November, inshallah. It's going to be the first event that I put on since COVID, which is really huge. It's not going to be a big one, it's going to be a small one, quite intimate, but yeah, it's a beautiful space. It's open to anybody. There's 10 rooms, and basically the concept is that it's your living room outside of your home. You can do whatever you want. There are board games, there's PlayStation. You can go there and just chill with your friends. There's Netflix, snacks. We also have a bookshelf. I don't know if you can see, but those are my books up there.
I love that. It looks so cozy and welcoming. I love it. So where is this exactly? Where is the base?
So it's in Al Khod. If you know where Lulu and McDonald's is, it's the
Right.
building that's literally right in between those two buildings.
Wow. Okay, close to me. So I'm definitely
Yeah,
gonna.
and also it happens to be in the basement, so that's where they get the name
The
from.
name.
Base.
Okay, smart. Okay, okay. Wonderful. So then now we go into these.
Yeah, so these are just a few posters from some of the stuff that I've done.
Right.
Yeah, it doesn't encompass all of the events, but the first one that I did was the documentary screening thing, the one with the two guys like looking at each other, the photo. That was that was a really cool event, and it was the first one, so I started really big. So this duo, they came together. They recorded a whole album. They're a producer and a singer, and from this experience, they recorded the whole process and they turned it into a documentary. So what we did is we had the documentary screening, we had a Q&A, and a performance, a live performance, which is really cool.
Wow.
The rest of it was a board game night. We had a few discussions that were always really, really interesting. We did our first Battle of the Comedians, which was both in English and Arabic, and it killed. Let me just say that the Arabic comedians are so funny. I was actually really worried. I'm not gonna lie. Wallah, I went into it and I'm just like, I don't know if I'm doing the right thing. The Arabic comedians, like we've never heard of them. We've never given them the opportunity, but I cried from how funny they were.
I'm
So
so
good.
glad. I'm so glad. And I'm glad
Yeah.
you gave them a platform to like, kind of showcase their talent.
Yeah. And this happened right before COVID, unfortunately. So we wanted to do so many other things. And inshallah, I'm going to try and bring that back. Now, looking at all of these posters, I feel like I want to go back to it because
That's
it's
right.
such good times. Yeah, another one that I'm really proud of is probably Dekwa Night, the one with the pink poster.
Yeah.
So during the time where things were kind of kicking off in Sudan, I wanted to do something that was going to culturally like celebrate Sudan and all of the things that they do when they're celebrating, like during their weddings.
Right.
So it was a really cool event. We literally had everything that was related to Sudan that we possibly can. First of all there were performances. Every single performer was Sudanese. They danced, they sang, they played Sudanese instruments, they read poetry, there was Sudanese food.
Yeah.
We tried to like emulate the same kind of vibe that they have, where they have like these beds that they usually put outside of their houses with the same kind of tapestries. We had henna, we had coffee. It was fabulous. I loved it. Yeah.
Sounds like a lovely scene. And would you mind if let me go to the picture and I'll come back to the posters in a second.
Yeah.
Was it right?
Yes, it was.
Oh,
It was sound.
wow. So pretty
Yeah.
with all the lights and everything. Love it.
It was magical, actually. Like, yeah, I was in awe. I couldn't believe that I was a part of this. Like how, and probably one of the most interesting collaborations to date.
I
For
love
sure.
that. Loved hearing about it. So the
Yeah.
last picture is the podcast.
My podcast people.
Here we go.
The experience starting from like meeting them was just smooth like butter. I couldn't believe it. I'm just like, okay, like something's got to give. I don't understand. Like, why is this so easy? Am I actually going to do this? I'm actually really uncomfortable in front of the camera. I know it doesn't really show most of the time just because like
Not
I'm
at all.
cracking jokes. But I really just never thought that that would ever happen. So funny story, my sister is a DJ, but she is also primarily like a photographer. And she never takes pictures of me because I'm so awkward in front of the camera.
I
But
can
with this podcast, I
say.
don't know what happened, I don't know. Maybe it's just luck. Maybe I just feel really comfortable. But I think with every episode that we put out, I grow. I feel like, especially recently, I've been catching myself more and realizing the ways that I need to kind of like expand my thinking or bring myself down to earth. I love that they gave me a lot of creative freedom. I feel like I give a lot of value, and they allow me to just kind of like go off on my crazy the admin side of me, because I really love planning. And I think this is where like this whole like learning study skills has really helped in this particular project, where I really like for everything to be organized. So yeah, I feel really at home with these people, and it's been an amazing journey. Season 1 is almost over, so we have 2 more episodes left. Tomorrow is the 7th episode, and then we have the 8th episode, and then we're going to break for a couple of months. So I'm really excited about all of the changes that you're going to see from season 1 to season 2.
Right. Yeah, it sounds, I mean, like it sounds like it brings you so much joy. So I'm really happy and excited for you to be part of it. I've watched a few and they've been super interesting. So can you give us a little bit of like a summary of what sort of podcast it is for the people to know what it's about?
Yeah, of course. So basically, I Am Outcast is uh, a bunch of normal people just like you who kind of like feel like outcasts in the way that we think. We're independent thinkers. We like to talk about things that are usually seen as either uncomfortable or taboo.
Mhm.
We like to keep it lighthearted. So even though sometimes things can get a little bit dicey and we can get uncomfortable, I think we've um, we've managed to create a safe space where we can share with each other, and also hopefully we try to keep the viewers in mind, in the sense that we would like for these conversations to basically leave us and go into the viewers' homes as well as your circles with your friends, because we think that um, these sort of conversations have the potential to actually create really big impacts and social change.
Right.
So we know that we're kind of starting off small. We're hoping that our humble beginnings take us further, not in the sense that we necessarily want to become famous, but we just want to be able to make a difference in our society and just leave these spaces better than the way that we found them.
Great. No, I'm really looking forward to the last few episodes and season two. Really excited for you guys. It's honestly been interesting listening to the different, topics that you've discussed. And it's true that a lot of it, is gets sometimes dicey and, but I'm glad that you're bringing it up. You're kind of voicing out what a lot of people think, but don't really talk about. And I think that discourse is really important. Just yeah, to kind of voice out your thoughts and not be worried about people being, too defensive about it or come off aggressive. So it's like watching you in that safe space having this conversation has been really refreshing. That's all the pictures. And this will come up to the end of our interview. So Aisha, thank you so much for sharing your story with us all. I truly appreciate it. Having learning differences is stigmatized in Oman. And so sharing stories like this really helps break that. And in the end of the day, everyone has the potential to do well. We all have challenges of some sort, and that doesn't mean we cannot still achieve greatness, which leads me to ask you the last two questions. So if you could go back in time and talk to Aisha in school, what advice would you give her?
Okay, I think I would tell her that um, not to let other people tell her what her limitations are, um, and that she has unlimited potential. Um, the only thing that's probably like stopping her from being able to really flourish and become the person that she wants to be is the fact that she doesn't know how to study, um, and that it's okay that you're not in the same that you're not moving at the same pace as everybody else. Yeah, basically that just because they tell you that you're stupid doesn't mean that you're stupid, I guess.
Yeah.
I think that's probably one thing that I still feel like I'm dealing with until now. Like I'm 31. Okay, let's just put it out there. Yeah.
You're still
So
young.
I'm
So
30.
great.
Yeah. It's not about like me feeling old, but I just feel like it's so crazy that I'm still dealing with all of these things that I internalized when I was a kid. Like I'm talking about things that happened like even before I was 12, and
Right.
I'm still dealing with it until today. I still can't get over it. Every time I have these conversations with my parents, like I just get eye rolls and they're like, dude, like get over it. Khalas. Kiberti, you're over it. And I'm like, I'm not though. I'm not. I still don't know what to do with these feelings, because now I feel like I'm constantly trying to overachieve in everything that I do. I don't feel completely bad about that because it makes me feel good about myself, but I hate that I feel the need to go that far in order for me to feel like I belong here and that it's like I can claim the space. I can feel like I'm useful. I feel like I'm constantly trying to, you know, go out of my way. And yeah, it's funny because I think that it makes me quite difficult to work with in certain situations because I'm so meticulous about details. I'm crazy. Like I'm just gonna put it out there. I'm
Just
crazy. Like as an
I'm the same.
administrator.
I'm the same.
By the way, when I saw your outline, I'm just like, this is the kind of like I'm all about this. I
I'm very
appreciate you so much. You
meticulous.
don't understand. I'm just like, this is a girl after my own heart. We can be friends. We can be friends. I love it. Love it.
Yeah.
Because I would do exactly the same thing. Like you framed it properly. I'm just like, see, like you just know exactly what to expect. There's no surprises. And I
Right.
don't like surprises. I don't
Yeah.
like surprises. I don't like getting caught out. I don't
Mhm.
like feeling dumb. I don't like feeling like I
Right.
don't have the answer. I don't mind saying that I don't have the answer, but at the same time, like if I'm not the most impressive thing that you've seen in that meeting, I'm just gonna walk away feeling like I failed. Like, how did I not overachieve? Like, what did
Yeah.
I not over
You
prepare
become a
for?
perfectionist and you're trying to overcompensate because you felt like you were lacking back then in school. I felt the same like throughout up until now. Like I feel like I'm sort of getting better at managing those feelings, but I can be very cutthroat to work with because I'm like, hey, you're not gonna pull me down. I'll lift you up, but you will not pull me down. So I
It's
can
like
relate to
talking to
you.
me. Yeah, dude, same. And it's
Yeah.
terrible. It's so bad. And I'm not even trying to like gas myself up because I don't think that this is the way that we should feel. I think that it's really unfortunate that we feel like we have to overcompensate this much. It's a
Right.
lot of energy to exert. Like you get exhausted from working on a project, and honestly, it's one of the reasons why I'm kind of glad that I'm not really like doing the whole like events thing. It made me crazy.
Right. Because
It
there's
made me
so much
so
that you
crazy.
have to deal with and control, and it's yeah, I can
Yeah,
imagine.
dude. Yeah. So right now I'm trying to work on that aspect. Like in my career, I think that this is where I'm at right now. That I'd like to do the things that I love, but I'd also like to not feel the need to constantly prove myself and overcompensate.
Right.
And it's tough because of the industry that I belong to. With artists, people are always trying to like, they're always looking at you like, okay, monkey dance, like show me what you can do, like prove to me why you should be here, or what is it about your art that makes you so interesting.
Right.
And like I'm at that point where I'm just like, I don't have to prove anything to you, like.
Yes, I love that. And hey, like balance and finding balance is like a lifelong journey. It's like a forever kind of figuring it out thing. There's always something that will come up and you'll have to kind of try and figure out how to gain balance again. So I think you're doing amazing. And I think you're right in saying that, like, maybe taking the whole events thing off your plate has sort of brought you back to equilibrium now. So I'm glad to hear that. Which leads me to my last question. What advice do you have for people that are starting their career that have dyslexia? Like any advice that you might have for them?
To the people who are dyslexic as well as their parents, pay attention to the things that you enjoy. Passion is everything. If you don't care about it, you're probably going to struggle through it. For me, obviously, like I look at everything through the lens of creativity and like creative play. And I really think that passion and creative play are like so intertwined. I think that if my parents, for example, would have realized how much I love to read and how good I was at writing, I probably would have come to the creative space a lot faster. Because
Right.
I'm still really good at writing. Maybe I'm just not as creative and like free flowing with my writing the way that I am with drawing. But I think that I probably wouldn't, like, my career wouldn't have looked like this. Not that I regret it. I love the way that it happened. But dyslexia needs stimulation, and it needs the right kind of stimulation.
Mhm.
So yeah, paying attention to the topics that you like. Topics become more like objects, at least for me, especially, like, given that we tend to look at things from the macro view. And the brain wants to play with objects that it likes, it wants to turn it around, it wants to examine it. And I like to think of myself as kind of like a creative scientist. Whenever I'm starting a project, I look at it from every single angle. And I think that's one of the reasons why I say that, like, so meticulous with details. Like, when I think of an event, it's not just thinking about, oh, where is it going to be? What is the decoration going to look like? I think of everything from how you're going to feel as soon as you walk into the space, how I'm going to stimulate all of your senses. Like, everything has to be thought of. It's a whole multi-sensory experience.
Right.
So I like to play with experience. I like to play with the senses. What do you like to play with? Try to think of whatever topic or whatever object or whatever it is that you're interested in, and look at all of the different connections. And honestly, if you can't do it as a full-time thing, that's completely fine. Not everybody has to do the thing that they love full-time. Maybe you're somebody who has a better, a better, who's better than me at balancing.
Yeah.
I can't balance very well, so that's why I do it full-time. But you could do it part-time.
Yeah.
And I think that anybody who doesn't have the the ability to cultivate this deep interest and just look into any kind of passion is really missing out on a lot. So for parents, I really would urge you to pay attention to the things that get your kids' imagination stimulated, and the things that make them curious, the kind of questions that they ask, the way that they ask it, and also not to shame them. And if you have any inclination or any feeling that your kids are dyslexic, please get them assessed. And don't make them feel like they're slow. They're probably more intelligent than you can imagine. They just learn in a different way.
Yeah. No, that's amazing. Oh, yeah, good.
Yeah. The last thing that I want to end with is, obviously, because this whole talk has mostly been about creativity and how dyslexia can bring out the best parts of creativity. There's 5 main ways to basically get into the creative space. The main function when it comes to creativity is you need to be in an open mode. Open mode meaning you have to be relaxed, you have to be receptive in order to be able to play. But there are 5 things that get you to that place.
Okay.
So the first is time. The second is time. The third is space.
Yeah.
Dude, time.
Yeah.
There's no clock. You need to give it the space, right? So the second is space. The fourth is confidence.
Right.
I feel like, no, sorry. See, and now I can't count. Time, okay, space.
Yeah.
Confidence.
Right.
Humor. And that's 5.
I'm glad that you brought all of that up. And I think it's very important that you touched on the fact that, we should be focusing more on, children's interests and let them explore it. And to get in touch with our creative side. I think that's something that, we are all born with, but sort of dies over time because of the, the school.
I don't think that it dies. It just gets suppressed.
Dormant. Let's say dormant. It goes dormant because, I mean, you go through your schooling education and you're kind of forced to have one size fits all model, be the same as everybody else, and you kind of go through all the standardized tests.
Be serious.
Yeah, and the thing is, I feel like as a child, the reason why we have this trauma is because you spend most of your time at school. And if school is always bringing up what you can't do rather than what you can, then you're going to feel like you're really failing if you're not doing well within those subjects that they're focusing on, so, or the way that they're teaching. So I think it's very important, not just for parents but for schools, to also provide extracurricular activities to see what children are interested in, and yeah, let them explore it.
Yeah, honestly, like one of the things that like I put a note down is I wanted to also stress on the importance of educational reform. I definitely think that there is, dude, like half of the stuff that we learned in school, it was all useless. We all know this. We all know like half of the stuff that I was shamed for, I don't even know why I'm carrying that with me.
I know, we didn't even need it.
Well, and okay, so just to give you one example. So I told you that, when I first started, you saw within those images that you saw, there were the mandalas, the circles. Yeah. If I had a math class and they wanted to teach me about the circumference of a circle, and they wanted to teach me about 360 degrees, how to use a protractor, how to use a compass, if they taught me how to do that in art, I probably would have retained that a lot more. Like I had to learn that stuff all over again when I started drawing. But if they taught me that in school, I would have at least enjoyed that class. It would have stuck. Right. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? So I don't know. Is it like educational reform, or is it just that we have really bad teachers? Like, I don't know. You see, yeah, that's the thing. Can you blame the teachers as well? Or like, yeah, no, I agree with you. I think the thing is that, the volume that they're dealing with, they have so many students and all of them are quite different. So it's like, that's why they have this kind of standardized mass education. But the thing is, now with technology, really, you can do so much to create a more individualized experience. I think that they're not utilizing tech enough. Although they have the tech, they're just not utilizing it. There's just so much now. There are apps, there's this, there's that you can use in a classroom that can really give that child that experience and support that they need individually. So I think that's where they sort of went wrong, is they're just trying to, mass standardize, everyone do the same thing, which is so unrealistic. We're all kind of, unique in our own way, and we all have our different difficulties. I mean, dyslexia is just one, but there's so many different other ones that, some of them aren't even labeled. So tech can take us very far. I think that we need to kind of look back. You're right, the education system needs a reform. And really think about what we're doing here, because even with university, to be honest with you, having done my internships and everything, I applied pretty much 2% of everything that I spent so much time learning about in school and university. Like, it's right. So yeah, they're definitely doing something wrong. Yeah. I learned so much more on the job than I ever did. I learned so much more just going on the internet by myself and just knowing what I'm interested in. Yeah. Like, seriously. Like, even when it's so upsetting that for all those years I was just holding on to this idea that, oh my God, I'm not good enough, I'm not as good as everybody else, because of something that they don't even remember. They don't even remember. Yeah. And most people go in and like they study something and then they end up working in something entirely different. And you end up working learning on the job and everything. Yeah, no, I just want to know, what's the point? I know. Because you want money. Like, no, definitely. But yeah, thank you so much, Aisha, for sharing all your wisdom and knowledge and advice with us all. And I wish you the best of luck with all your future endeavors. And I'm really excited to see what you have upcoming next. And all Aisha's information and socials will be provided below. Show her some love and support. And yeah, thank you so much, Aisha. Thank you.